There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking News with Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Chattanooga and Middle Valley both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murder, Talking News. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the notification bell if you'd like notifications whenever we have new uploads. So I hope all you guys are doing great. I know I've been kind of absent lately. I've been so incredibly busy between dealing with health issues and leaking bathrooms, and you can't find people to repair them, so you have to figure out how to do it yourself. Boy, it's been fun. And I think when you're dealing with something like that, it is very stressful because I'm very particular about my bathroom, and now I'm having to do my work and I'm judging myself pretty hard. Then we have the holidays coming out on top of that, so we have a lot going on. I hope you guys are doing great. I miss talking with you guys, but hopefully, things will get back to normal here, I hope. But there's something I wanted to share with you guys, and I'm doing that right before I go back to work on this bathroom. Now, you guys, I don't know if you watched the Heidi Planck videos that I put up, but this is the woman that is out of California that went missing suddenly after attending her son's football game. If you're not familiar with the story, I'm going to refer you back to the videos that I've already posted. It'd be better for you to know the details before hearing this video. So today I found some documents. Well, Daily Mail had posted some documents that had to do with Heidi Planck, her son, and her ex-husband, Jim Wayne. And I'm going to share those with you because I debated whether we ought to share these or not, because these are, it's something I normally wouldn't share in a case like this, but it might help understand what, could have happened to her. We learned that Heidi's working for a company that's being investigated by the SEC, her boss being Sugarman. So he's being investigated as well. This is dealing with money laundering, and of course we'll find out more as we start looking more into this case. We know that her ex-husband, Jim Wayne, has been wanting full custody of their son since forever. And we know that Heidi had an argument with her boyfriend, who is a bigwig attached to one of Mark Zuckerberg's organizations. This is going to be a hard case for investigators to really solve unless something big tips them off. This woman has a whole bunch of chaos surrounding her. Now, those of you that have been following this case and know the case, Heidi's dog was found at the Flower and Hope, or was it Hope and Flower apartment complex, which is a really nice apartment complex. You have to pay, it costs you nearly $6,000 a month just for a 2-bedroom apartment. According to the people that found the dog, they said they found it roaming on the 28th floor without its owner. And later, they were able to pull up some surveillance footage from the area that shows Heidi walking in an alleyway beside the building with her dog. Just minutes before that, she left her son's football game at halftime. Her ex-husband said that she seemed antsy, and she was moving from bench to bench and just acting a little odd. So here's what's strange. She doesn't have her phone with her or her purse. And her ex-husband is able to get his hands on that stuff once they file, basically a missing persons report later. And he holds on to it for a little while before police actually gain custody of Heidi's property. Jim Wayne, at the beginning, didn't seem to have anything negative to say about his wife. He was just concerned about her whereabouts. And a short time after she goes missing, he sought full custody of their son, saying that he would need to get therapy immediately because, he's not sure the outcome of this case. Was she kidnapped? Is she dead? And if she was, that his son would be completely distraught. This is something that he's been seeking for a long time. And how would this affect her being missing, him getting treatment that he needs? I don't think that would have affected him really. But I do not know the California laws. Haven't had time to look that up. So if you're aware of this, anybody familiar with custody battles in California, share below. Now, Heidi is still missing. They locate her dog. The dog has a chip. But still, there's no one knows where Heidi is still. There's not even a sign of her car. Many people believe that it has something to do with her workplace, including her ex-husband. Because he says if there's any bones in the closet, well, she's going to be one of them to know. But let's go over these documents that are coming out. They're from 2015, and it's where Jim is kind of giving complaints against his wife and how she has this odd behavior, and he's seeking full custody of his son. His concerns is he's very fearful, and it's immediate risk of harm from the mother of the child. And he's wanting the court to hear his concerns about the mother of his child and their relationship and his concerns of that relationship. So this is actually covering October 8th through October 11th. And he said that the mother's acts are damaging and dangerous to their child. And he's seeking an emergency court order to protect their son. Jim is actually seeking to be awarded sole legal and physical custody of their son. And B, no visitation pending further review by the court. According to Jim, he said that he married Heidi August 9th of 2008. And from that result of their relationship, they had a child, a son, Bond Wayne. He was born in November of 2010. But just a few years later, he says, on December of 2012, they are divorced. And he explained that after this divorce that they shared legal and physical custody of Bond. A few years later, October 10th, 2015, Jim Wayne says that his ex-wife Heidi checks herself into a psychiatric facility. And that for a few weeks, Heidi had been suffering from disorientation, mental conditions, and a full psychotic break. And only a day after she had checked herself in this place, it's October 11th of 2015, and Heidi calls Jim and asks him, if he would please take her home. According to Jim, the reason for her wanting to leave the place is she says, I am in a scary place and they are molesting me. I really didn't want to share this part, guys, but in order to understand for sleuths out there that are searching anyways, Jim said that he asked his ex-wife why she felt this way. And her response was, every time I sit down to pee, I have to poop. Now, according to what I'm learning right now, Heidi has a history of saying things that doesn't make sense or it doesn't fit the narrative, which we'll go over in a little bit. Jim then says that he tells his ex-wife Heidi that she should stay. And Heidi then asks him, "Why do I have a C-section? We don't have children." He leaves out a lot that was said during that, and the only thing we know is she wants to leave this facility and that she hangs up the telephone. Not certain why, if she ends it abruptly or she's angry. But he says about an hour later, Heidi calls Jim back and she leaves him a voicemail and tells Jim that it is her intention to stay at the facility. Now he jumps back to October 8th of 2015 around 1 p.m., days before she's admitted into the psychiatric facility. It appears that she has custody of Bond. Then she calls Jim and asks him to come pick up their son. Though it was Heidi's turn to have their son, he said he didn't have a problem with that, and he didn't pause. He immediately went to pick up the son. So Heidi tells Jim that she needs to be at her place of work by 3:30 and that he needs to pick up their son. Strangely, he says that Heidi is the one that actually drove the son to him, it looks like, and that she did not arrive until around 5:30 p.m. So it appears that she ended up dropping Bond off at his house. So this is what's interesting to me. She arrives at 5:30 at Jim Wayne's home, right? She's supposed to drop the son off. He said he then noticed that his ex-wife seemed stressed and slightly disoriented. She asked if he would be willing to drive their son and her home. Jim said he advised her that he would drive them, but they would have to wait until later. He had to finish working on his last client. And so for those of you who don't know, Jim is a hairstylist in Beverly Hills. So I guess they drive to his place of work. So excuse me, it's hard to know because he lacks quite a bit of details here. So he says then Heidi asked him to give her and their son money so that she can take the son to dinner while they waited for him to finish. He says that the two of them go down to a restaurant down the street and they came back about an hour later. Here's the very interesting part. He says when she returns back, which is around 6:30 p.m., he noticed that she was very jittery and seemed nervous. Then she turned to him and exclaimed, "Isn't it so weird that I started taking things off the wall?" The question caused me to pause, as her conduct and demeanor seemed to be a bit suspicious. When I inquired as to what she meant, she did not respond coherently. Jim says that his ex-wife has a history of using substance or having substance abuse, but he doesn't say what it is. And he says, so I have learned to be aware of her conduct and try to be aware of when and if she is using. He said once they were back at his office, the son wanted to play cards. So they all walked over to Rite Aid, which is a few blocks from his office. He says while they are walking, that Heidi starts arguing with her son and then turned to him and said, "Will you please tell our son to hold my hand?" Jim asked her why, and she says because it's dark out. He says that he walked closer to them and then he puts his hand on Heidi's shoulder and asks, "Are you okay?" When he put his hand on her shoulder, he said he could notice that her face started to crumple and she was crying. After a few seconds, she started to collect herself and they continued to walk. Guys, real quick here. His behavior is kind of odd, isn't it? I mean, What's the big deal about her wanting to hold her son's hand? And if she's crying, wouldn't he want to know why she's crying? So what I notice is he's kind of detached here. And the only things he is concerned about is making her look bad in these court records. That's my observation. That doesn't mean that's what he's doing. He says when they walked into Rite Aid, she started shaking. Then she went pale. She turned to him and said, "I can't be here. It's too intense." And at that point, that he says that they walk out of the store quickly. Then they walk to his car, and he says, "I started to drive them to her apartment. When we got back, I watched her turn on the lights and then go into the apartment. After they got in, I started to drive to my house." Now, if he's concerned, then why is he allowing the son to remain there? That's interesting. Jim says before he could even get home, Heidi calls him and asks him if he would come pick them up. He said when he got back to Heidi's house, she was standing outside with her son with a full plate of bacon in her hands. The entire drive back to his house anyways, she was offering him bacon repeatedly and seemed slightly intoxicated. When they got back to Jim's house, the two of them, he says he don't make this very clear. The two of them go into the son's room. So he's talking about Heidi and Bond, their son. He says, and they started to play. This is interesting because he doesn't seem to know what's going on later. I was watching a football game, so I was in the living room. About an hour into them being in the room, I heard a very loud crash. Now, if you heard a loud crash, everybody knows you would immediately go to check on something like that, but he doesn't, especially if she's displaying some very strange behavior. So they're in that room for about an hour, and he says he didn't think to go check on the noise because he hears his son laughing. So he thought that his son was okay. About 30 minutes after that, it's around 9 p.m. that night, his son leaves his room and goes into the living room where his father is. And he seemed very excited. He looked a little guilty and he said, "Dad, you have to come to my room. My mom made a mess." Jim actually has his attorney attach pictures from that night, the damages that were done in his room, as Exhibit C in the court documents. Now, reminder, guys, this is happening on October 8th, 2015. This is a few days before she admits herself into a facility. Jim sees this strange behavior, but he lets the son go with the mom anyways. He doesn't do anything about it, and he's worried about who taking care of the son. Very strange. So he continues with, after his son come into the living room, he follows his son back to his bedroom, and when he walks into the room, he finds that the room is in complete chaos. So we're not really certain what chaos means, whether the toys are just everywhere or if there are broken things. I mean, I really don't know what he means by this. He says he looks around the room, and then he noticed that his ex-wife is no longer in that room. And he spots that the window's open. So he looks out the window, and he could see what he thought was her legs going over the fence. He says he yells out to Heidi, "Where are you going?" In which she responds with, "This just isn't right." Before we go any further, there's just one thing you need to know is Heidi does take Adderall. And so if you have psychological issues of any kind, this can stimulate, in some people, stimulate those problems. It can really mess someone up, with psychosis. The problem is he's not mentioning which drugs that she's used off and on, because it can also be signs of drugs. But it just seems to me also that she's having some psychosis going on. Very familiar to schizophrenia and a few other things. So Jim says that at that point, he goes to the front porch a few minutes later, and that he'll look for her out front. As he is walking out, he said 2 police cars pulled up by his house. There's no way that police officers in that little bit of time would have located her and had her in the car in just a few moments. I mean, that's what he said. I'm just going by what he said. He said an officer walked out of one car and asked me if I had an ex-wife, in which he responded yes. He said then the officer advised him that neighbors had called them to respond to the fact that Heidi was climbing on roofs, over fences in the neighborhood. And that a few minutes later, a second officer came out of the second car, and they had located her, and she was pretty messed up. According to Jim, the officer tells him that they located his ex-wife Heidi. An officer told him that she was located in one of the neighbor's yards, basically shutting an electrical circuit breaker on and off. The officers indicated to Jim that they wanted to take her into custody on a 5150 or to jail for breaking and entering. He doesn't say what happens after that. He says that at that point that he strongly believed that his ex-wife was on drugs, at least at that time, and that when she arrived at his home, he believed that her conduct demonstrated that she was not in control of her actions and consequently puts risk to herself and to their son. He explains that he does want his son to have a relationship with his mother, and that he has always done something to ensure that they have a relationship. Nevertheless, he says, I feel that that her conduct has reached a level that puts our son in serious risk of harm. And so at this time, he says that he respectfully requests that the court award him sole physical and sole legal custody of the child. He thinks that would be in the best interest of Bond. Interesting note here, he says, I want to mention that over the past 2 years, I have personally observed how well our son has adjusted to living with me, spending more time with me, and how much happier he is. And on most weeks, Heidi will, sorry, lost my spot there, guys. He says Heidi usually gives their son to him earlier than she's supposed to. Then he suggests that he feels that for their son's best interest, that Heidi actually go and get some types of treatment. This includes substance abuse and individual therapy. So, of course, you're probably wondering as well, what kind of substance abuse is he talking about? And the only thing that I've found so far, or any hints of anything that she was taking, was Adderall. It does seem that she's having some kind of psychosis. She's having difficulties, no doubt. So schizophrenia, it just keeps popping at the front of my mind. Was she dealing with stuff that she just didn't realize she was dealing with? Or was she taking something very serious and taking large amounts of it? When we don't know that much about her background or his, we know that she was living in a nice house when she went missing. She seemed to have her bills paid as far as we know. And usually if you're a person that has problems with substance abuse, you're going to have trouble with money, which we did hear that she didn't have much money in the bank when she went missing, because her boss, Sugarland, was accusing Heidi of taking money from the company. And Jim even said that that can't be the case because her bank account's basically not that great. So one way that we can know who Heidi is through maybe some of her friends, which they've really not had any specific details or character, personality, much information at all to be helpful to understand who she is. So reading over that court document, not saying that Jim is not a good person, but there's some things that kind of stand out there that make you question how he related to her and how he kind of didn't really care or didn't know how to help her. So after that, Jim says that she checks herself into a facility, so we don't know why she suddenly does this. Does he say, Heidi, I suggest that you do this because, it's affecting our relationship, our son, and everything? Or maybe Heidi was figuring out that something just isn't right. Well, you have to remember, when she's in that facility, she's still having these issues. She's not able to get a hold of any of the drugs if that's what she was doing. So it leads me to believe that there's something more going on there and that it might be a mental health issue. Regardless, if she does have mental health issues, would she have left her son behind? According to Jim, who knows her best, he said no. She would never not pick up her son. And would she leave her dog behind in an apartment complex with no one to care for it? So a lot of people are speculating that is not the fact. She would not leave her dog on the 28th floor of a strange apartment. Heidi took her dog with her from her house to her son's game. There is sense. I mean, they got on this pretty quick. There's a lot of sketchy things going around. She has a lot of sketchy things and people around her. And they have the security footage to show where she was last. Her dog was on the 28th floor, yet police are stumped. We don't know what they found on her phone, her computer. I'm sure they've been able to get a search warrant for all that by now. But the fact of the matter is, this woman remains missing, and we need someone to come forward that might know something. So I would speculate more on this and talk about more on this, but it's hard to do so when you don't know the person. No one's coming forward to say, hey, this is who Heidi was. Her social media is a bit quiet, so everything about her is a little quiet. So real quick, her son did try to reach out to her on October 18th with no response. I still say this is really odd behavior. This text is kind of odd to me that the son is pointing out it's been 2 days in a row and he haven't picked up. That's weird. I think these texts actually show you that Heidi seems to be a very lovable person, and she cares about the people in her life. Whereas I noticed that Jim is a little bit different. He kind of is short and sweet and not show that much appreciation as Heidi does in these few texts that we have. So for example, she says, I'm so glad that you liked them. Her son said, you liked red flowers, but I couldn't find the red arrangements I liked. I mean it. I really do thank you for all that you do for him. I do appreciate it so much. He adores you, and you're a very special person to him. This means a lot to her, and his response to that is, no, I love the color that you got me. It's perfect, basically, and our son truly means so much to me. Thank you again. So very short and sweet. And I'm noticing there's just not that connection to her like she connects to him. And when you read the writing in the court papers, you can see where he's very concerned for his son, but in responses that are available right now, it's kind of a different person that we're looking at. So maybe there's a little bit more going on between them two than we are aware of. All I can say is people like Chris Watts, Lori Vallow, and many others, they have taught me that the vibes that you get from them is not necessarily the truth, and that these people can be very deceiving while giving off the energy that they're not. So now when I look at cases, and I'm sure police need to do the same, you have to always, get the benefit of the doubt, or also don't doubt their benefit. It's just so hard to see some people doing some of the things that they do. So I'm sure, like police and stuff, they have to always be on their toes and consider the fact that it's the least likely person that they need to look into. In most cases, not all, it's someone that knows them, that has something to do with their disappearance. And the thing is there's no clue, at least for the public at this time, as to who it could be. So, anyways, guys, check out my latest video that I uploaded before this one. It's about 3 women who are pregnant and how they continue to remain missing with no updates, no clues, and their case is kind of in limbo. So almost cold, 2 of them. And in order to get people to investigate on these paused cases, you have to have new tips. Anyways, guys, we have Thanksgiving coming up. I hope you're all ready. I know I'm not ready. I'm trying. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday. I want to send out my love, hugs, and guys, thank you so much. And please do me a favor and push the like button and subscribe. Also, just drop a comment, if only to say hello. Thank you guys for caring, and I'll see you guys soon.